Вітаю, шановні колеги. Сьогодні я буду виступати українською мовою.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I will be speaking Ukrainian, and I'm very glad to be here today. As a representative, as a citizen of Ukraine, I would like to express my gratitude to the Polish people and to the Polish government. A gratitude that our whole nation feels. Thank you so much. We are very grateful to you.
Ну що ж, будемо розпочинати.
Okay, we shall start. Today, we'll be talking about the safety of children online during the war. I would like to start with pre-war period, and I would like to describe our project to you. By the same token, I would like to touch upon how to help refugees. 2.5 years ago, we had a line, 1545, where you could call both as a child and as a parent. This was a call line composed with the cooperation with the government. And I think that this could be also applied to different countries. I know that this is an international conference, and therefore we can engage in a discussion about that. We've educated more than 700,000 children, parents, and teachers. We conducted more than 30 educational programs for teachers, and we won in the peace category of the Partnership for Sustainable Development of the UN Global Compact Network. We were the first via request on the topic of children's safety, and we also compose material against sexual abuse of children. We also launched the chat book called Stop Sexting Bot, which works on the site, and in Telegram we published 2 books about children's safety online, and we also launched a very good campaign that took us several years. We worked together with the Ukrainian Parliament in order to propose a new act against child abuse online. We even directed a short film about this matter and started working on a comic book and a comic story for kids. Now, about a morning that I will remember forever. It's been half a year, and I'm still waking up at 5 a.m. The day we woke up in the early morning changed our lives forever. And I think that each and every person in this room feels the changes that happened during the past 6 months. Now, we would like to discuss how these changes affected the safety of children online. Of course, this is not a new matter, but on the 24th February 2022, we understood that the greatest risk for children is the risk that they have to deal with offline. But in the past 6 months, we also could see online threats. Now, do you know what this building is famous for? Do you know what that is? Please raise your hand if you know. I am sure that you're familiar with the events I'm going to refer to. And you'll understand everything. This is a mosque in New Zealand on the 15th of March 2019. There was the first terrorist attack in New Zealand, transmitted on Facebook. We couldn't react to that attack. However, there were 200 views on that before Facebook realized that there was a terrorist attack in New Zealand. Back then, we realized that nothing can be erased from the internet. Following the attack, there was 1.2 million copies made of that original video, and this shows us that violence and violence-related material, including sexual violence, cannot be erased from the internet. Now, that was 2019, and we have 2022. Now, this is the first war that is being transmitted 24/7. And everything is put online. No one actually knows how many views the Ukrainian war has. We don't know how many copies will be made. I was in Vienna recently, and I asked my colleagues whether they knew that for quite some time there has been an armed conflict in Ukraine, and actually if people could see that there is a Russian army on in Ukraine a long time ago, perhaps certain events wouldn't have taken place. But let's talk about the results of transmitting war online. First of all, I would like to touch upon the privacy of victims. I'm sure that you've seen many examples of victims shown online: pregnant women, tortured captives. And I think that this is something that deals with privacy. People have content about them published. And actually, this is a big problem because each and every individual has the right to forget. Thinking about sexually abused children or women, this is very important to keep the right to forget certain events. Now, there is also a question of the Russian identification of data through social media, because we also deal with the hybrid war. There is an actual physical war and a hybrid war. In Ukraine, the conflict is really complex because Russia also collects information based on what people publish, based on their opinions. Now, what about children? What do children have to do with that, or what can they do about it? With that, sorry. Homicide in Ukraine shows us the complexity of the situation and the threats, because Russia actually contacts children and solicits information about armed zones, or about certain things. Finally, there is also a question of disinformation. For instance, in Belarus, people and mere citizens were tangled in a situation where you have different front lines. For instance, my husband fights in the east, but this is not the only war that we are having. There is also an information war, which actually involves soldiers, Ukrainians, and we also are dealing with the fact that some information are blocked. Now, there are situations in which the information published by Russian is not blocked, but on the other hand, information published by Ukrainians is blocked. Because of the fact that the whole world witnesses the Russian invasion on Ukraine, we have support, for instance, of Poles. And it is very encouraging to see the support for refugees, to see the humanitarian aid, military aid, looking at the situation we can see that actually the world can see us fighting this giant beast, and people can help us. But on the other hand, we are touched by the psychological traumatization because everything is transmitted. Previously, there was a selection of content that was transmitted, and currently internet has it all. So internet publishes everything. We can see tortures and we can basically see everything without any censorship. And I'm not talking about the political one, I'm talking about the psychological one. This leads to psychological traumatization of people who watch content like this. It leads to anxiety, of pain, and even depression, as well as sleep disorders and nutrition disorders. It leads to mental disorders. And the fear of missing out, a phenomenon that is quite complex. I realized that the fear of missing out is present in Ukrainians during the war. And it's not only present in Ukrainians. Basically, people involved in the conflict, volunteers, as well as other participants, some people publish. Basically, people think that they are not doing enough if they don't publish 24/7. They are afraid that they would actually miss an important content that the world should see.
От зараз ми тут з вами всі, я не бачу тут дітей в нас в залі.
Currently, we are in a specific world. Now, speaking about the offline and online zones and worlds, here we are in an offline world, we are in a room, our kids are at school. But on the other hand, both during the war and also in the online zone, these worlds are different. Namely, when we engage in an interaction during the war, we can see a certain disappearance of boundaries between the child world, the adult world, etc. And everyone is in the very same world. Now, moving on, we are now living in the times of the pandemic. Currently, the pandemic became our own reality. So, speaking about that, let's think about what the reality should look like during the war and during the pandemic. We are currently undergoing a transformation of our point of view. There are military actions in Ukraine. But on the other hand, almost each and every country was engaged in humanitarian actions or in accepting refugees. The war affects very many countries. So what is a standard? What is actually a normal reality? What can we do in the world of the Third World War? What can we do in the world where we cannot protect our children? We should do something as specialists. First of all, we cannot pretend that the elephant in the room doesn't exist. Following the Russian invasion on Ukraine, we have to understand that we have to be very sincere about the facts. In 2014, this conflict started. And actually, even before, many experts claimed that the war would start. Now, I was conflicted. Should I discuss it with my team? Should I discuss it with my colleagues? Or should I pretend that everything is well? On the 22nd of February, we talked with my colleagues. For instance, there is Anya sitting in the first row. She is a member of our team. Many members of our team thanked us that we actually discussed the risks and what actually can happen.
When we pretend that there is no elephant in the room, we are really separated from the events. We cannot communicate with children in the same way as we communicate with adults, obviously, but we should not create an illusion and pretend that something is not there. We have to control the psychological well-being of our children. We have to keep asking them, how are you feeling? What's going on? It's easier for adults to overcome those challenges, but children need special psychological care. And I'm not talking only about the children who are in Ukraine right now. I'm also talking about children who became refugees, who witness what's going on online. They might have a lot of questions, but they might think some questions are not worth asking. That's why it's so important to discuss all that with children. Another thing, you have to be open to discussing the child's emotions and concerns. When children approach you with their questions, with their fears, it is really important to say, not just don't worry, it's going to be okay. This is actually the worst thing that you might do, because you actually neglect all the emotions or the internal world of the child. So it's really important to talk about those concerns and fears, even if it seems that it's never going to happen. It's also important to be really honest in expressing your own emotions, but also considering the child's age. What is also crucial is to try and tell them what's going on inside you, what's worrying you, what's going on, because this helps to build a relation, a rapport with your children. It's also important to control your own emotional state, because calm parents mean calm children. My husband used to be a businessman, but on the 24th of February, he took up the arms and he went on to fight for his country. I started to think what I can do in this situation, and I understood that if I take good care for myself in terms of psychology and emotions, I'm going to be supportive to my team and to my husband. So each of us has got their own front. We have to get a grip of ourselves, and this is how we can help each other. Another thing is to talk about a plan. We might have some fears, we might have some problems, but let me pause for a moment, because I'm not sure how much time I have left. How much time do I have till the end of my presentation? Okay, thank you. So we can continue. What else can we do for our children? First of all, I wanted to talk about the online principles for adults, because oftentimes we say that children did this or that wrong, but the truth of the matter is that not only children make mistakes online, adults do it too. So the first thing to remember is that we should understand what we publish online. I'm not sure what it's like in Poland. I forgot to ask my colleagues before my speech, but in Ukraine we have a very big discrepancy. Adults are on Facebook, but children are not on Facebook. They are on Instagram, both adults and children. So on Facebook it's often about politics, some discussions, and Instagram is quite emotional. It's about emotions, but also, unfortunately, violent content witnessed by the children. So watch out where you publish content, because if you hang out with your friends and you have children, maybe you might want to talk about some issues differently, and the same should be true for your online conversations. Pay attention to who's reading your content. So take care of your own mental health. remember what you publish online. How do you feel when you publish some content online? Of course, we have to monitor internet use, but also we should pay attention not to publish content including your children, especially if your child is not an active user of the social networks. Please do not publish content without their consent. Oftentimes we can see some information about how your child is feeling, how your child is experiencing the conflict in Ukraine. Don't do that, because your children might not approve that. So what other skills should we hand down to our children? After some time has passed, we started thinking, what should we do? How to take care of our kids? We have bombs being dropped on our heads, and it's not a metaphor. This is actually happening. So we started to think as a team what we can do, and we started developing programs for educators, for teachers, for parents, in order to take care of children's safety online and offline. So what are the new skills for children who are in Ukraine and who are abroad during this Third World War? Discuss what your child is viewing and where it's viewing something. So it should be like a contract between parents and children, maybe a more formal one or maybe a spoken contract. So what we watch and when we watch it. Another thing, try to learn to distinguish disinformation from the truth and check the sources of information. This is another skill which is really crucial for adults. But what we are seeing also is that there are so many fake news circulated around. People are trying to incite the panic or to influence others' behaviors. So try to teach children not only how to cross the road, but how to take fake news from actual true news. This is another important remark. Very often it's the adults who spread the fake news. We see something, that was especially true at the beginning of the war. We saw some information that seemed crucial, and people started sharing it, reposting without even verifying the information. So somebody might see it and say, oh, so if this or that person has published that, this must be true. And in this way, we are actually propagating and verifying the content because somebody trusts us. So remember about that. First, check if the information is true and post later, or once you have made sure that this is an actual news. We should not publish any military information. In Ukraine, this is illegal. We are not allowed to publish information about the location of military equipment or some other military information. But that should be true not only for Ukraine, but also for the rest of the world. It's really crucial so that we don't publish information about trains transporting military cargo, for example. If you publish this information abroad, you are jeopardizing Ukrainians because Russians are very diligent in monitoring what's going on online abroad. So this is a way to protect us, to protect our country and our children against Russian aggression. So what can we do? We can do some parental control. We can also technically or based on a contract, limit the time that your child spends online. This is true both for adults and children. In those crisis situations, it's very easy to get dependent on your technical gadgets because you want to follow what's happening all the time. So make sure you monitor how much time is spent online. Switch off the notifications. Children are starting their new school year, so if they see too many notifications, if somebody commented something, if somebody has published something, that's a huge burden for the children. If there are so many many notifications coming to their phones, they influence them psychologically and mentally, and it actually impairs the learning process.
Це функції, як
What's also important is that we pay attention and we make some arrangements that some images should be blurred out or grayed out. And we should tell our children, if you see an image blurred out like this, don't open that.
ванну дитина не берегає. Це правда.
Also, the children should not take their devices to the bedroom or to the bathroom. This is especially important to avoid sexual violence. We are not going to discuss that in detail, but this is really important that your children follow those rules at home and at school. Creating some shared online activities both at home and at school,
І заземлювати.
distracting children from what's going on online, creating some shared space.
Yeah, just tell me how many I have and I will finish. Okay. Так, що ж нас ще тут є?
Okay, so what else do we have here?
З вами наближаємо
What's important for the specialists? We are moving toward the end of my presentation to provide additional information on possible risks, both for the people living here in Poland and also for the refugees. If you are a social organization, if you are a school or some community, please realize that the refugees are exposed in a number of ways. You might work together with Ukrainian organizations because they understand Ukrainian culture, mentality, and the challenges. And for this conference, we have prepared a small booklet. I have brought just one copy with me, but you can scan this QR code, and we will ask the organizers to share this with you. This is a small manual that you can send to Ukrainian refugee families, and it's about immigration and its impact on mental health, what the adults can do to provide a safe zone for their children, so what's an appropriate way to support psychologically the refugees, what's the content that children are witnessing in wartime, preventing child sexual abuse and exploitation, and screen time. This is a manual published in Ukrainian, so you can download it from the website, you can print it and put it somewhere on display, for example, in your center or in your reception point. This is on our website, as I said, so I will send it to you later. Also, as part of our project, we have a website in English. You can also scan the QR code to read some additional materials referring to child safety online. It's in English, and also you can share it with your colleagues. And I think it's time for me to finish because I think I have gone beyond my time. My contact details are here. My LinkedIn and Twitter are in English, so if you want to follow what we are doing as part of our project, if you have questions, please do contact me. And if you want to ask me about the manual or if you have questions, please let me know. Thank you very much, and glory to Ukraine.
Okay.
Bardzo dziękuję. Anastasiya,
Thank you very much.
Your presentation is very important, especially now when the war is not happening in traditional format anymore. It is the war that is happening online. Czy mamy jakieś pytanie z sali? Do we have any question from our audience?
A lot of new information, I think.
A lot of information, very useful, but it's very important because today we have more than 1,000 participants from Ukraine, of course, watching us online. So thank you very much for your participation. Zachęcam do jednego pytania.
We have time for one question.
Everything was clear. Yeah, I think it's a really difficult topic to raise questions, and yeah, but it's new reality in which we live, so we have to get used in some way and be strong. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.